The pregnancy test shook in Olivia Mitchell's hands. 2 pink lines looked back at her like she was in big trouble. 3 months ago, she had spent one wild night with Ethan Parker, a single dad who worked for her at Reynolds Architecture. Now, as the company's very tough CEO, she had to tell him the truth before people at the office started talking about it. But how could she tell him that under her cold outer layer, she had been falling in love with him since the day he started working there? If you're enjoying this emotional story already, please hit that like button and subscribe to catch all our stories that look at the confusing, messy, beautiful truth of surprise love and new beginnings. Olivia Mitchell stood at the huge windows of her corner office, watching Seattle's tall buildings disappear behind sheets of fall rain. At 36 years old, she had everything she'd ever worked for. She was the youngest CEO in Reynolds Architecture's 70-year history, with a reputation for being smart that was matched only by how tough she was. People in the business called her the Ice Queen, and she wore the nickname like a shield. Until 3 months ago. The memory of that night still burned through her defenses. The yearly company trip at Lake Chelan. Too much wine. A surprise meeting with Ethan on the dock after everyone else had gone to bed. The surprising openness in his eyes when he talked about raising his daughter alone after his wife died. The way the moonlight had made his face look softer, making him look younger than his 34 years. One night. One mistake. Except it hadn't felt like a mistake until the next morning when work reality came crashing back. She had left his cabin before sunrise, and they had kept a careful work-only distance ever since. He never talked about it. Neither did she. Now her hand moved without thinking to her still flat stomach. The pregnancy test that morning, her third in a week, had proven what her body had been trying to tell her. Morning sickness, tiredness, being bothered by smells that had never bothered her before. A knock at her door snapped her back to the present. "Come in," she called, fixing her gray pencil skirt and smoothing her silk shirt. Ethan Parker entered with a folder tucked under his arm. Even after 3 years at the company, he still carried himself with the quiet confidence that had first caught her attention during his job interview. His dark hair was a little wet from the rain, and his blue eyes had that focused look that made him one of her best project managers. "The Westlake Tower changes," he said, placing the folder on her desk. "I added the sustainability parts you suggested." "Thank you." She kept her voice neutral and professional. "How's Emma doing with the new school year?" A smile made his face softer when he mentioned his 8-year-old daughter. "She's doing great. Her teacher says she has a natural talent for math and science. Like her father." The words slipped out before Olivia could stop them. Something changed in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, at the personal comment. "I appreciate that." An awkward silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and the weight of their shared secret, or rather, secrets. He didn't know about the new life growing inside her. She didn't know how to tell him. "Is there anything else you need?" he asked, his hand already on the doorknob. Olivia opened her mouth, then closed it. "No, that's all for now." After he left, she sank into her chair, pressing her palms against her eyes. She had built her career by making decisions quickly, by never hesitating. Yet here she was, frozen by fear, not of failing at work, but of something far more scary, showing her feelings. Her assistant's voice came through the speaker. "Ms. Mitchell, your 2 o'clock appointment is here." Olivia straightened her back, pushed her personal problem aside, and did what she'd always done best. She buried herself in work. Ethan Parker's apartment was organized chaos. Lego pieces scattered across the coffee table, half-finished science projects on the dining table, and a trail of socks leading to his daughter's bedroom. After putting Emma to bed with 2 bedtime stories and a promise that yes, they could go to the Science Museum this weekend, he fell onto the couch with a glass of whiskey. 3 months. It had been 3 months since that night with Olivia, and he still couldn't get it out of his mind. The way her professional mask had fallen away, showing a woman with doubts and dreams and a laugh that changed her entire face. The way she'd looked at him like he was more than just an employee, more than just a widowed father trying to balance his career with raising his daughter. For one night, they'd been equals. Just two people connecting in a way that had felt surprisingly right. Then morning came, and she was gone. Back to being Ms. Mitchell, the demanding boss who expected perfection and accepted nothing less. He'd respected her unspoken decision to pretend it never happened. What choice did he have? She was his boss. He needed this job. Emma needed stability. But lately, something had changed. Olivia looked tired. Distracted. He'd caught her staring at him during meetings, only to quickly look away when their eyes met. Today, she'd asked about Emma, something she rarely did, despite knowing he was a single father. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister. "How's my favorite niece? Still coming for dinner Sunday?" He typed back a quick yes, grateful for his sister's support. After Allison's death from cancer 4 years ago, Megan had been his rock, helping with Emma while he pieced his life back together. She'd encouraged him to apply for the job at Reynolds Architecture when he was still drowning in sadness, convinced that his talent was being wasted at his old company. And she'd been right. Despite Olivia's demanding nature, working at Reynolds had brought back his passion for architecture. He'd grown more in 3 years under her leadership than in all his previous jobs combined. His phone buzzed again. "And how's the Ice Queen treating you?" Ethan stared at the message, unsure how to answer. How could he explain that beneath Olivia's cold outer layer was a woman of amazing depth? That he'd seen glimpses of vulnerability that stayed with him. That sometimes, when she thought no one was looking, sadness shadowed her eyes in a way that made him want to reach out. "Same as always," he replied instead. Setting his phone aside, he picked up the framed photo of Allison holding newborn Emma. "What would you think of all this?" he whispered to his late wife's smiling face. Sometimes he imagined he could hear her answer, practical and loving as she'd always been. Tonight, he heard nothing but the ticking of the clock and the distant sound of Emma's sleep music drifting from her bedroom. The following week brought a crisis at work. Their biggest client, Meridian Development, was threatening to pull out of a $50 million project over worries about the timeline. Olivia called an emergency meeting, gathering her top team in the conference room. "We need solutions, not excuses," she said, pacing the length of the polished table. "Meridian is getting nervous about the permit delays, and I need something real to reassure them." Her team watched her carefully. They'd seen her like this before, focused, demanding, never giving up in her pursuit of excellence. But today, there was something different in her intensity, a brittleness that hadn't been there before. "What if we phase the project differently?" Ethan suggested, spreading out the blueprints. "We could begin construction on the north section while the permits for the south are still processing. It would show progress without messing up the design integrity." Olivia stopped pacing and studied his idea. "That could work, but we'd need to change the foundation plans." "I can have revised plans by tomorrow morning," he said. Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment, the room seemed to fade away. Then a wave of sickness hit her without warning. Olivia went pale, gripping the edge of the table. "Ms. Mitchell," her assistant asked, concerned. "Are you all right?" "Fine," she said sharply. "Just continue the meeting. I need some air." She walked quickly from the room, keeping her composure until she reached the women's restroom. Locking herself in a stall, she threw up violently, her body betraying her at the worst possible moment. When she came out to rinse her mouth and splash cold water on her face, she found Ethan's assistant, Diane, watching her with knowing eyes. "Ginger tea helps," Diane said quietly, "and saltines. Kept them in my desk drawer through all 3 of my pregnancies." Olivia froze, meeting the older woman's gaze in the mirror. "I don't know what you're talking about." Diane's expression remained kind but knowing. "Of course not. But if you did need ginger tea, I'd be happy to bring you some. No questions asked." After a moment of tense silence, Olivia nodded once. "Thank you." When she returned to the conference room, the meeting continued as if nothing had happened. But she felt Ethan's concerned gaze following her, and she knew she couldn't keep her secret much longer. That evening, as the office emptied, Olivia remained at her desk, staring at the email she'd drafted to the board of directors. She'd built her career on planning ahead and perfect execution. Now, she needed to apply those same skills to her personal life. She knew that a pregnancy would change everything. The board might question her commitment. Clients might doubt her availability. Her carefully built professional image would shift forever. And then there was Ethan. What would this mean for him, for his daughter? He'd already lost one wife, rebuilt his life around being a single father. She had no right to make that harder. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, quickly closing the email draft. Ethan entered, carrying 2 cups of tea. "Diane mentioned you weren't feeling well. Thought this might help." The simple gesture of kindness nearly broke her down. "Thank you," she said, accepting the cup. The smell of ginger and honey floated up, confirming Diane had indeed shared her remedy. "The revised foundation plans are done," he said, placing a flash drive on her desk. "I think this approach will satisfy Meridian while we wait for the remaining permits." "You didn't have to finish them tonight." He shrugged. "Emma's at a sleepover. I had the time." Olivia took a sip of the tea, feeling it settle her stomach. "How do you do it?" she asked suddenly. "Do what?" "Balance everything. Work. Being a parent. Having a life." A sad smile touched his lips. "Who says I have a life? Most nights, it's just me, Emma, and whatever Disney movie she's obsessed with that week. But you make it work. Because I have to." He studied her for a moment. "Is everything okay, Olivia? You've seemed different lately." The use of her first name, something he never did at the office, hung between them, an acknowledgement of the closeness they'd once shared. "I'm pregnant," she said, the words escaping before she could reconsider. Ethan went still, his expression unreadable. "I see. It's yours," she added, meeting his gaze directly. "From that night at the retreat." He sat down slowly in the chair across from her desk, processing her words. "How long have you known?" "A week. I took multiple tests to be sure." "And you're certain it's—" he trailed off. "Yes." Her voice was firm. "There hasn't been anyone else in over a year." The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his thoughts clearly racing behind his calm exterior. "What do you want to do?" he finally asked. "I don't know." For the first time in years, Olivia allowed herself to show uncertainty. "I never planned on having children. My career has always come first. But now," she placed a protective hand over her stomach, "now I find myself considering possibilities I never thought I would." Ethan leaned forward, his expression serious. "Whatever you decide, I want you to know I'll support you. Financially, emotionally, whatever you need." "You barely know me," she said softly. "I know enough." His gaze was steady. "I know you're brilliant and driven. I know you push people because you see potential they don't see in themselves. I know you secretly check in on the junior architects when they're struggling with a project, even though you pretend not to notice." Surprised, she asked, "How do you know that?" "People talk, and I pay attention." He hesitated, then added, "That night at the retreat, it wasn't just about physical attraction for me. I've respected you for years, Olivia. As my boss, yes, but also as a person." His words touched something deep inside her, a place she'd kept carefully guarded. "I need time to think," she said. "This changes everything." "I understand." He stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, you wouldn't be doing this alone. I know something about unexpected parenthood. It's terrifying, but it's also the best thing that ever happened to me." After he left, Olivia sat in her darkening office, the city lights blinking on outside her window. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to cry, not from sadness or fear, but from the overwhelming weight of possibilities she'd never allowed herself to imagine. The following Sunday, Ethan sat at his sister's dining table, pushing food around his plate while Emma talked excitedly about her school's upcoming science fair. And then we're going to add vinegar to the baking soda volcano, and Mrs. Peterson says it might explode all the way to the ceiling. Emma's eyes widened dramatically. That sounds messy, Megan laughed, ruffling her niece's hair. Maybe we should practice outside first. Can we do it now? Emma bounced in her seat. Finish your dinner first, Squirt, Ethan said, forcing a smile. After dinner, Megan sent Emma to play in the backyard while she cleared the table. Okay, spill it, she said, turning to her brother. You've been a million miles away all evening. Ethan sighed, debating how much to share. Work stuff. Bull. Megan crossed her arms. I know your work face. This is something else. He stared out the window, watching Emma arrange rocks in the garden. If I tell you something, can you promise not to freak out or lecture me? Megan's expression softened as she sat beside him. That bad, huh? Olivia's pregnant. His sister's jaw dropped. Your boss, the Ice Queen, is pregnant? Don't call her that, he said sharply. Megan studied him, realization dawning. Oh my God, it's yours, isn't it? Ethan nodded, the reality still feeling unreal, even days after Olivia's confession. How? When? I mean, I know how, but Ethan, she's your boss. It was at the company retreat. One night. We both agreed it was a mistake and moved on. He ran a hand over his face. Except now there's a baby. What are you going to do? Megan's voice softened. Whatever she decides. It's her body, her career at stake. And if she wants to keep it. The question hung in the air. Ethan looked out at Emma again, remembering the scary, exciting days after her birth. How unprepared he'd felt. How Allison had laughed at his panic when changing his first diaper. Then I'll be there, he said simply. I'll figure it out. Megan squeezed his hand. You know, most men would be freaking out right now. Oh, I'm freaking out, he assured her with a weak laugh. I'm just doing it internally. Have you told Emma anything? He shook his head. Not until I know what's happening. She's too young to understand the complications. And how do you feel about Olivia beyond the pregnancy? It was the question he'd been avoiding, even in his own thoughts. I don't know, he admitted. That night, I saw a different side of her, someone thoughtful and vulnerable and real. But at work, she's completely closed off again. Maybe she's scared, Megan suggested. You had Allison to figure out parenthood with. You had me for support. Who does she have? The question stayed with him long after he'd tucked Emma into bed that night. Who did Olivia have? In 3 years, he'd never heard her mention family. She attended company functions alone. Her office held no personal photos, only awards and architectural models. On impulse, he pulled out his phone and typed a message. Just checking in. Hope you're feeling okay. He stared at the screen for several minutes before pressing send, unsure if he was crossing a line. To his surprise, 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Better today. Thank you for checking in. Olivia's reply was formal, but Ethan sensed something more behind it. If you need anything, I'm here, he texted back, then added, no pressure. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Would you be free to talk tomorrow after hours? His heart raced as he replied. Yes. My place? Emma will be at her friend's until 8 o'clock. I'll be there at 6 o'clock. Ethan spent the next day in a fog of anticipation and anxiety. When his doorbell rang at exactly 6 p.m., he took a deep breath before opening it. Olivia stood there, looking different in jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual power suits. Vulnerable. Human. Come in, he said softly. She entered hesitantly, taking in the evidence of his life with Emma. Colorful artwork on the refrigerator, a half-completed puzzle on the coffee table. I've made a decision, she said, turning to face him. I'm keeping the baby. Relief flooded through him. I'm glad. But there's more. She took a deep breath. That night at the retreat wasn't just a mistake for me, Ethan. I've had feelings for you since you started at Reynolds. I just never allowed myself to acknowledge them. His world tilted. Why not? Because I'm your boss. Because relationships complicate everything. Because I've spent my entire life avoiding vulnerability. Her hands trembled slightly. But this baby changes everything. And I need to be honest with you and with myself. Ethan moved closer, taking her hands in his. I've been falling for you too. The real you, not just the CEO everyone fears. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Any of it. Being a mother. Being with someone. Neither do I, he admitted. But maybe we can figure it out together. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home to a place he'd never been before. 6 months later, Olivia sat in a board meeting, her growing belly now impossible to hide. The company had been surprisingly supportive after the initial shock, especially when she and Ethan had presented a clear plan for managing their professional relationship. And that concludes our quarterly projections, she finished, closing her laptop. As the board members filed out, Diane slipped her a note. Emma's school called. She won first prize in the science fair. Olivia smiled, her hand resting on her stomach where their son kicked energetically. She'd never imagined this life, sharing parenting duties with Ethan, helping Emma with homework, preparing for their baby's arrival. It wasn't perfect. There were still whispers about their relationship, questions about her commitment. But for the first time in her life, Olivia had found something more valuable than professional success. A family built on truth, second chances, and unexpected love. When Ethan met her outside with Emma bouncing excitedly beside him, holding her blue ribbon, Olivia knew she'd made the right choice. The Ice Queen had melted, and in her place stood a woman who had finally found the courage to embrace the messy, beautiful complexity of life. If you enjoyed this emotional journey of unexpected love and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that explore the complicated reality of modern relationships. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below.